Hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines that we're tracking for you this evening: a tepid Friday to close a lacklustre week on Dalal Street. The Sensex and the Nifty end with cuts for the second week. Mid-caps and bank stocks buck the trend, though. A federal appeals court temporarily pauses a lower court's order to halt Trump's tariff juggernaut, allows the administration to keep collecting import taxes till the case is being litigated, also gives the US government some breathing room as it explores legal options on seeking relief from the country's highest court. The trade negotiations between US and China are a bit stalled, says US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessant. Adds there will be a call between President Trump and President Xi to iron out differences. The government wants the RBI to spare small borrowers from the stricter gold loan rules, proposes an exemption for loans below 2 lakh rupees, also wants the new rules to be deferred till January next year. Multinational companies under the GST scanner, sources say global capability centres and Indian subsidiaries of MNCs face inquiries on the export of services, client contracts and invoicing structures. That's an exclusive. Relief for L&T. The Mumbai Metropolitan Authority scraps 2 road project tenders worth 14,000 crore rupees after the Supreme Court raised concerns over L&T's disqualification. The state government will decide the future course of action. Yoga Guru Ramdev's Patanjali Ayurved faces government scrutiny for possible governance lapses. Sources say the Ministry of Corporate Affairs has issued notices seeking details of financial transactions. CBI arrests a Deputy Director of the Enforcement Directorate, Chintan Raghuvanshi, for allegedly soliciting a bribe. The CBI laid a trap after being approached by a businessman in Odisha who was summoned by the ED officials and was allegedly asked to pay a bribe of 5 crore rupees. The budget airline model is not dead in India, says IndiGo CEO Peter Elbers, while adding low cost does not mean low proposition. Also says IndiGo is following the law on flights to Turkey and wet leasing planes from Turkish Airlines. Promises changes to the network if the government takes a decision. Well, let's go straight to the big story that's breaking at this hour. GDP data is out and Q4 at 7.4%, Lata, well ahead of the poll.
Oh, absolutely. It's a very good number as far as the GDP is concerned at 7.4%. We did get a couple of respondents saying 7.2, but even our best respondent was not baking in 7.4. That's a very positive surprise. The GVA growth also is higher than what the street expected. My average was 6.5, and I think that's what Informist is also saying. But the actual number has come in at 6.8. Now, I'll tell you that 6.8 is more important than that 7.4 because you take the GVA, that's the output that the country, the economy actually produces. From that, you deduct net taxes and you get the GDP number. So the GVA to GDP, it all depends on how much indirect tax is collected and how much subsidies are paid out by the government. The lower the subsidy, the higher the GDP will look. So while GDP 7.4 is celebratory and, laudable, the 6.8 GVA is what I would think calls for much more celebration. It's much better. And everyone was agreed on 6.5. So it's a damn good number, 30 basis points higher. Agriculture has given a very positive surprise of 5.4. I got more like a 4 point something kind of average for agriculture. Mining sector at 2.5 was always expected to be subpar. Manufacturing 4.8 is bang on what I got from the poll. Construction sector, it gets counted in services. So that one has done very well, actually. 10.8. I did get a near double digit from some respondents, but 10.8 is a very good number. It just goes to show that government capex has kept up the pace. Real estate has kept up the pace. That's what brings a good construction number. Services sector more generally has given a 7.3% growth, and that has contributed. Obviously, if the overall GVA is 6.8 and services are giving you 7.3, clearly what's lagged is manufacturing. Agriculture obviously cannot come to the 7% mark. At 5.4, it's done a very good job. But manufacture is the laggard, as our poll had indicated. Now, for the full year, the GDP number works out to 6.5%, much better than the best estimates we got. We got 6.3 average, with some people suggesting 6.4, but 6.5 is quite a good number. And that's because the previous quarter's number has been recast. The Q3 number Originally, we had got it at 6.2 in February when the number came. Now it's become 6.4. So that's also adding to the overall tally. And of course, the Q4 number has brought up the average to 6.5%. So that's a very respectable number, a 6.5% growth on top of a 9.2 last year. Remember, last year's base is very high. On top of that, that's a damn good number. In terms of internals, again, it's very positive for the fourth quarter. Guess what? Capital formation. Capital formation has grown by 9.4%. I mean, that's very important because that's an investment in the future. It ensures better growth in subsequent years. Largely, it's government capex with private capex coming in only in some sectors like renewables and real estate. But nevertheless, 9.4, I think that's the best number for me in this entire piece. And private consumption also has not done badly, 6%. One would like it to be better, but urban consumption has stalled a bit perhaps. But 6% is something I would take with both hands. As we had said in our poll, investment will do better than consumption, and it has. What has let down consumption is government consumption. That's come in at minus 1.8. The government has done less of revenue consumption, revenue expenditure, more of capital expenditure. So all told, first cut, the numbers are extremely pleasant, very positive. If the stock markets were trading at this point in time, there would have been a cheer, for sure, a green cheer from the markets, a damn good number. But just to tell you how the bond markets look at it, if the growth is so good, why should the Reserve Bank cut too much? So what you're having as evidence from the bond markets is bond yields have gone up. Now they will factor in only 2 more cuts from the Reserve Bank and not, as some people said, 3 cuts and 4 cuts and the repo will go to 5%. That kind of expectation may get dampened, but that's immaterial. We don't want much help from the Reserve Bank. Growth is good. That's the message that the first cut of the numbers is giving us, Shireen.
Well, that certainly is the message being sent out by the GDP print. Growth is good and it's a pleasant surprise that's coming. But Lata, very quickly, just to get back to the laggard there on manufacturing, and if you can throw a little bit of light there on what that number reflects and what the expectation now is.
Well, manufacturing has lagged through the year. I mean, I don't know if you remember, 2 days ago, we got the IIP number for April. That's actually this year. That came at an 8-month low of, 2.8% or thereabouts. So something is not working as well in manufacturing. India has always been a services country. We've not been that good a manufacturing country. The 2 terms of the NDA rule has tried very hard to make India a manufacturing hub. But it's not succeeding as much. It could be that ease of doing business needs to get easier. When you speak to CEOs who come on the show, off guard, off camera, they will tell you that states are competing on unease of doing business. They are not competing on ease of doing business. It could be that. It could be that Chinese competition, which is pricing is opaque and competitive. So that could be one reason why you don't want to tread down that path. It could be a myriad reasons, but this has been, a laggard for us for some time now. I think it was last in 2012 or 13 that manufacturing was about 17% of GDP. It's now gone down to 13%. So clear services is doing very well. GCCs, all of them come under services. That may be the reason why manufacturing is static at the same place and services is taking off. That could make it look smaller. Be that as it may, our dream of making India a manufacturing hub as well and not just a services hub requires more effort, very clearly.
Well, yes, manufacturing has been a perennial problem over the last many years, but that's the big story. The pleasant surprise that's coming on the Q4 GDP print coming in at 7.4%. We will, of course, analyze the numbers threadbare. Lata will be back with us, with our experts to take us through the implications of what the number tells us. And as Lata was pointing out, if the markets had been trading, they would have cheered this number. But let's take stock of the markets and how they closed for the week. The Sensex and the Nifty closed with minor cuts after a volatile session, with the Nifty ending below 24,800. down by about 82 odd points today. The Sensex lost 180 points, the mid-cap index closing flat. Banks, though, outperformed, closing in the green today. But for the week, the Sensex and the Nifty were down, and this is the second straight week that we've seen our markets fall for the week, falling, though, less than 1%. But mid-caps and the bank stocks bucking the trend. That's the story for the week. The Nifty down by 0.5%. The mid-cap index closing higher by about 1%, and was the case for the Nifty Bank. But let's head straight to the big global story. President Trump's tariffs will remain in effect, at least as of now. A federal appeals court in Washington has reinstated them a day after the U.S. Court of International Trade in Manhattan blocked most of President Trump's so-called reciprocal tariffs. Now, the appeals court has ordered a temporary stay on the lower court's decision while it considers the Trump administration's papers. Here's that story.
A U.S. appeals court on Thursday reinstated President Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs, a day after a trade court ordered an immediate block on them. The Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit in Washington provided no opinion or reasoning for reinstating the tariffs. White House trade advisor Peter Navarro said that U.S. tariffs would remain in place for now.
The tariffs remain in place. The court told us, they didn't all but tell us, they told us, go do it another way. So you can assume that even if we lose, we will do it another way. And I can assure the American people that the Trump tariff agenda is alive, well, healthy, and
But the White House said the ruling had not interfered with any negotiations with top trading partners that are scheduled in the days ahead. Wednesday's order to block Trump's tariffs had given financial markets a brief boost. But Thursday's turn of events left Wall Street with no clear direction. Analysts said broad uncertainty remains over the future of Trump's tariffs.
Well, that's the latest there as far as the tariff battle is concerned. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessant has said that the trade talks between the U.S. and China are currently stalled. Bessant, in an interview with Fox News, said that a call between President Trump and President Xi may be needed for the two sides to reach a deal. Remember, Bessant visited Switzerland earlier this month for talks with Chinese officials. Both nations had agreed to roll back most of their recent tariff hikes for 90 days. Here's Scott Bessant.
I would say that they are a bit stalled. I believe that we will be having more talks with them in the next few weeks, and I believe we may at some point have a call between the president and party chair Xi.
Well, that's the U.S. Treasury Secretary. And the Federal Reserve Chair, Jerome Powell, met with President Trump in the White House to discuss economic growth, inflation and employment. In its release, the Fed said that Powell did not discuss his expectations for monetary policy. However, he reiterated that the path of policy will depend entirely on incoming economic information. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said that President Trump believed that Fed is making a mistake by not lowering interest rates.
President and I both saw the statement that the Fed put out after the meeting. That statement is correct. However, the president did say that he believes the Fed chair is making a mistake by not lowering interest rates, which is putting us at an economic disadvantage to China and other countries. And the president's been very vocal about that, both publicly and now I can reveal privately as well.
Well, let's head back home now to the big story. The Mumbai Metropolitan Authority has scrapped two road project tenders worth 14,000 crore rupees. Now, this comes after the Supreme Court raised concerns over the disqualification of L&T's bid. MMRDA has told the apex court that the state government will decide on the future course of action. Ashmit joins us now to explain to us what transpired in court, what this means now for the MMRDA and for L&T. Ashmit.
Well, a big reprieve coming in for L&T. L&T was contesting as far as this MMRDA contract is concerned, the aggregate value being in the vicinity of 14,000 crore rupees. What's important is that at the technical stage itself, they had been disqualified, which essentially led to a challenge before the Bombay High Court. Then this matter traveled to the Supreme Court. The concern that had been raised by the L&T is that the other competing company, that was the L1, that was selected as the best bidder in this entire tender process, was Megha Engineering. And given that this was a reverse bidding process, their bid, the L&T bid, was 3,100 crore rupees lower than that of Megha Engineering. And that was an argument that was made before the Supreme Court as well, that why is it that a company, despite the disparity of 3,100 crore rupees, there appears to have been a concerted effort in favor of Megha Engineering and not L&T. Now, this inspired a great deal of shock from the CJI-led bench of the Supreme Court. He observed on numerous occasions that L&T is a name that inspires confidence. L&T L&T is the company responsible for building the Central Vista project in New Delhi, also asking on a public money question towards MMRDA as well as to Maharashtra on the difference of 3,100 crore rupees on those bids. And that is something that we understand led to MMRDA going back to the drawing board, then coming before the apex court and clarifying that they're scrapping this entire tender process altogether. What they've now said, what they've told the apex court is that there will be a fresh process, but what means and modalities will be, that's something that the Maharashtra government will take a call on. But for now, this process where L&T was ousted has been entirely scrapped, and that has been conveyed to the Supreme Court.
All right, Ashmit. That's one of the big stories that you're tracking in court. But the other, the Delhi High Court has ruled that the amount paid by Indian companies to Amazon Web Services for cloud services cannot be taxed as royalty. Ashmit, this does come as a big win for Amazon Web Services. Take us through what transpired in court, what the order says.
Well, the order has very clearly said that, look, payments being made by Indian entities which are using Amazon Web Services, cloud services, those payments will not qualify as royalty and therefore cannot be taxed as such. That's the big takeaway. That's the assertion that the Delhi High Court has made, holding up AWS's aggregate position that they've conveyed before the Delhi High Court. Now, the issue essentially boiled down to two assessment years. That's assessment year 14-15 and 16-17. For these 2 years, the tax department had been looking at amounts that went towards Amazon Web Services. That's the US incorporated company. That amount for these two assessment years was calculated to be in the neighborhood of about 1,250 crore rupees. The tax department's contention was that money being paid by Indian entities to AWS US qualifies as royalty, and therefore I will proceed to tax it as such. This is something that was contested first before the ITAT, then before the Delhi High Court. The Delhi High Court spelling it out very clearly that from their scrutiny of these documents, their scrutiny of the arguments, there is no case made out by the tax department for considering this payment as royalty and then subsequently taxing it. So on that front, a big relief coming in for AWS. This would have been a negative precedent for them if it went against them, given as how their cloud services have expanded here in the country. But this is not the final word. This is a Delhi High Court division bench judgment. The tax department does have the legal remedy of approaching the Supreme Court.
All right, Ashmit, many thanks for joining us. Now, Yoga Guru Ramdev's Patanjali Ayurved faces government scrutiny for possible governance lapses. Sources tell us that the Ministry of Corporate Affairs has issued notices seeking details of financial transactions. The probe will also scrutinize transactions at Patanjali Ayurved and is likely to take about 3 months to be completed. The scrutiny is based on information from other probe agencies alleging corporate governance issues. Now, multinational companies are under the GST scanner. Sources tell CNBC TV 18 that Global Capability Centers, or GCCs as they're commonly known, and Indian subsidiaries of MNCs are facing inquiries on the export of services. Timsy is standing by with more. Timsy, what exactly is the DGGI, the GST authority, concerned about, and what is the industry response?
Well, that's right. Sources have told CNBC TV 18 that Global Capability Centers, or GCCs, and Indian subsidiaries of MNCs are currently under GST scanner. Several companies across business hubs like Haryana, Bengaluru, Maharashtra are currently facing inquiries from GST authorities on export of services, challenging the export status of these services. CNBC TV 18 has learned that summons and notices have been sent to firms that are offering back-end technology, education content development, marketing, design and R&D services to overseas clients. GST authorities at state and centre, along with DG GST Intelligence, are conducting this action, where they have sought detailed information on business models, client contracts and invoicing structures to determine whether these services are being provided as on own account or merely a facilitation that they provide. Meanwhile, industry claims that they are getting summons and notices for work done for foreign parent companies, and the government's interpretation of treating them as intermediary is incorrect. They also claim that companies are not arranging or facilitating supplies between two parties or two separate entities, but are providing services on their own account to foreign clients as exports. It is important to note that India is home to over 1,700 GCCs employing 1.9 million professionals and is expected to expand to around 2,400 GCCs employing over 2.8 million people by 2030. India is based trying to generate GCCs as the new upcoming sector, where it has generated $64.6 billion worth of revenue in 2024 and is projected to expand this to $105 billion by 2030. Now, to be seen is whether government steps in to get some clarity from the GST Council on this to iron out the issue between the authorities and these companies. Back to you.
Tinzi, many thanks. Now, the CBI has arrested a deputy director at the Enforcement Directorate, Chintan Raghuvanshi, for allegedly soliciting a bribe. The CBI laid a trap after being approached by a businessman in Odisha who was summoned by the ED official and was allegedly asked to pay a bribe of 5 crore rupees. Dhananjay Khatri joins us now with more details. Dhananjay, what does the FIR say?
The Central Bureau of Investigation has arrested a Deputy Director rank officer of the Enforcement Directorate in Odisha in connection with an alleged bribery case. The accused has been identified as Chintan Raghuvanshi, who was posted as the Deputy Director at the Bhubaneswar Zonal Office of the ED. Raghuvanshi, who is a 2013 batch of the Indian Revenue Service officer, was allegedly caught red-handed while accepting a bribe of Rs 20 lakh from a Bhubaneswar-based businessman named Ratikanta Raut. The CBI had laid a trap, after which the businessman approached the agency to complain about the ED officer soliciting bribes. According to the CBI FIR, the complainant said that he was summoned for questioning at the ED office in Bhubaneswar in March this year. ED officer Raghuvanshi approached him and asked him to meet his another known accomplice referred to as Bhakti. Both of them allegedly sought a 5 crore bribe in exchange for settling a case filed under the Prevention of Money Laundering Act. Investigations revealed that the bribe demand was later negotiated and settled for Rs 2 crore. In this complaint to the CBI on May 28th, the businessman alleged that Chintan Raghuvanshi asked for a bribe to settle the case against him, but he does not have the means to pay that amount. CBI laid a trap and detained Raghuvanshi while he was allegedly accepting initial tranche of the bribe worth Rs 20 lakhs. The Enforcement Directorate has registered a case against Odisha businessman in 2020 for an alleged money laundering case. ED officers allegedly promised to close the case against him if he paid the bribe to him.
Dhananjay, many thanks for joining us. On to CNBC TV 18 exclusive. IndiGo CEO Peter Elbers says the budget airline model is not dead in India. Speaking to CNBC TV 18, Elbers said that low cost does not mean low proposition. He added that IndiGo is following the law on flights to Turkey and wet leasing planes from Turkish Airlines, and said that the company and the airline will change its plans if the government takes a decision to bar any such arrangement. Take a look.
Well, I think there's two different elements. One is our flights operating into Turkey, connecting Indian customers to the rest of the world. And that operates within the boundaries and the framework of the air service agreement and is governed by the two countries. And IndiGo is always compliant with whatever happens in terms of government regulations and framework. And if that were to change, we will adjust our flights and schedules accordingly. We have the 787s. The first one is in operation. More are coming by the end of this year. And those we're using for direct flights into Europe, contrary to the flight to Istanbul and then connecting to parts of Europe. So, of course, we keep a close eye on what's happening. We keep a close line with the government in making sure that we continue to be compliant.
Very recently, the CEO of a leading American airline said that the budget airline model is dead. There are no budget airfares. What is your view on that?
Countries and markets develop at different stages. The domestic US aviation market cannot be compared to the domestic Indian aviation market. First of all, I would say India is probably the most competitive market in the world. And we still have millions and millions and millions of travelers who travel by train today and want to go by plane. And if you go from the northeast to the southeast of the country, which takes 2 days by train, and now we connect directly from Guwahati to via Delhi to Chennai, I mean, that demand is still there. So cost leadership for us is important in order to make sure that we continue to offer affordable fares. But with that, we build on that with the aspirational travel.
Well, that's Peter Elbers of IndiGo. With that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of Business 360 with the big story coming in on the macros. A pleasant surprise there on the Q4 GDP print, racing to 7.4%. We will keep you updated on all the top stories of the day. But for now, a break. Back in a moment.